Deacon. I'm the event coordinator here at Boulder Bookstore, and welcome to our YouTube channel. So today I'm going to talk about books set in New York City. I just got back from a trip visiting with my two best friends in New York City, and it was super fun, and it was my first time there since the pandemic. So it was really fun to be back there. I used to go pretty regularly since one of my friends lives there. And during the pandemic, I realized I'd read a number of books set in New York City that had some very different perspectives, and so it was fun to go back after having read some books about the city. So I thought I'd talk about those today. So first up is Elizabeth Gilbert's City of Girls. So this is, you probably know Elizabeth Gilbert as the author of Eat, Pray, Love, but she's gone on to write many other great works of fiction, this being one of her I think it's her most recent book. I know it looks a little bit long and daunting, but it reads super fast. It's historical fiction. It's written in the style of a letter in which it begins with the main character, Vivian, gets a letter from this woman named Angela, basically saying, Angela is telling Vivian that her mother has died, and she knows that Vivian was very close to her father, but she's never understood what the relationship is between her father and Vivian. So she's asking, now that her mother has passed, if she will enlighten Angela, who's maybe in her 20s or 30s at this point, and Vivian is in her late 80s. So this letter is Vivian's letter to Angela, telling sort of her life story and how she came to be something to her father. And a lot of it is really set in the war period, the World War II period, in the 40s, in New York City, specifically in the theater. So a lot of the story revolves around Vivian, who's really good with clothing. She went to Vassar College, she got kicked out, she wasn't doing very well, but comes from a very wealthy family, and her Aunt Peg owns this sort of dilapidated theater that is a little on the edge of things, and so she's sent to Aunt Peg to spend the summer and kind of is part of this whole theater scene and gets to know all these different sorts of people in the theater, and, you know, makes a lot of questionable decisions that put her on a particular path. But it's really about her coming into her own and realizing that, you know, the traditional way of doing things, of being in relationships, isn't necessarily what she wants out of life. So it's kind of starting as this young rich girl in New York, just wanting to have the time of her life, and coming into her own and becoming somebody, and becoming a person that really makes herself happy, and finding the ways that it's not necessarily what society wants for her to do. So it's a really fast read, and it's really just enjoyable to see New York through this historical lens and through just a different sort of pair of eyes. So the next one is Deacon King Kong by James McBride. And I was hesitant to read this just because it seemed very serious. Like, it's the back of the book says, you know, it's September 1969, and this old church deacon known as Sportcoat, you know, shoots the most notorious drug dealer in the projects, and the stories about the impact that this has on everybody in this community. And while that's all true, this book is wacky. I mean, the first chapter is called Jesus is Cheese, because there's this whole subplot that goes throughout the book where at this church once a month there is a delivery of really good white people cheese, and everyone in the community, it's a pretty mixed community. There's a lot of black people, Dominican, Puerto Rican, it's just like all over the map in this community. They all come together to get this good white people cheese. and just that it's really funny. And like so this scene where he shoots this drug dealer. The drug dealer doesn't die, and his name is Deems, and he's like this 19-year-old kid, and he was a part of the community, and he's recently turned to bad, and he doesn't die. So it's like he gets Sportcoat like shoots him in the ear basically. But then he was like eating a sandwich when this happened, and so he's choking on the sandwich, and then Sportcoat like does the Heimlich maneuver on him, and it's just like somebody else is describing this scene, and it like just describes it like it's like a dog. It's just totally wacky and bizarre, but it's a really interesting look at this you know, sort of poor community in New York City in the late 60s, and how this community has come to this place, and the interactions that everybody, and like, and there's so, this is like a community full of characters. I mean, there's Sportcoat, but there's also his best friend Hot Sausage, and then there's Bum Bum, and there's this whole, like, everyone has a nickname, and you get to know them throughout this story, and there's a lot of seriousness to it, because there's, you know, it's a poor community in New York City. There's a lot of problems, but there's so much joy in the community as well, and it's just a really fun story. So, highly recommend. All right, and my last book, coming a little more into the present, but there's still a historical theme, One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston. This is a romance. And the main character, her name is August, and she's feeling pretty lost in life. She's kind of gone to a couple different colleges, and she's just not really finding her place. And so she decides to give New York City a try. So she's attending college there, and she doesn't have much money, so she, you know, gets into a room with that 3 other people already live in. So, but these become really main characters. They're like they become a really tight knit community. It's LGBTQ, so there's trans characters, there's gay, lesbian, bi, all over the map, you know, and a lot of diverse characters as well. But it's again like really centered on this community and how these people really come together to support one another. But the main thread of the story is that August, when she's going to college, she takes this one train every day, and she starts to notice there is this girl that she's really attracted to. She actually ends up meeting this girl by accidentally spilling coffee all over herself. And this girl gives her her scarf to try and mop up some of the mess. And then she starts to notice this girl's always on the same train, so she's thinking they're on the same commute, but she starts to notice that she's on the train no matter what time she gets on, and you kind of and she kind of starts to wonder, like, is there something supernatural going on? Because she never seems like she can't get off the train, and you kind of come to realize that she's originally from the 70s, this girl Jane, and she is stuck on this train. But she also doesn't really, like, her memory is full of holes. She remembers very few things. So the crux of the story is August trying to help Jane, while of course they're falling in love, because it's a romance. But it's got kind of a fun, you know, sci-fi element to it, with the sort of the time travel bit in there. But it's a really fun romance, and a really fun way to see New York, again, from a different pair of eyes, a different setting than I think what I have experienced a lot in New York. So those are my 3 New York books. Thank you for watching this video. If you like what we're doing here, we'd really appreciate it if you would like our videos and subscribe, and tell everyone you know to come and watch our channel, because we do great stuff here. Thanks. Have a good day.